Do you ever feel like you're just constantly busy? Relentlessly checking off tasks, but your to-do list just seems to get longer, not shorter. It's almost like we've been promised that all these digital tools would make us incredibly efficient, but, well, for many of us, it often feels like we're just running on a treadmill. Busy, sure, but not really getting to what truly matters. Well, today we're diving deep into a concept that promises to transform that exact struggle. We're exploring Carl Pullein's insightful book, Your Time, Your Way, and its central framework, the time sector system. Our mission in this deep dive is to unpack the core principles of this approach, showing you how to shift from that task-centered mindset to a more purpose-driven, time-focused way of living and working, aiming for clarity and much less stress. So, okay, we bought into the promise of digital efficiency, but it often feels like it just brings more work, more emails, more notifications. Why do you think that is? What's really going on beneath the surface?
Well, the key insight here, I think, is that this isn't just about feeling busy. It's about being production-focused, but without any clear direction. It's prioritizing the urgent, which, let's be honest, often means other people's demands over what's truly important for your long-term goals. Carl Pullein observes that if you actually look at what most people complete in a day, something like over 90% of it is spent on stuff that just didn't matter in the long term.
90%? Wow, that's a stark number.
Mm.
It really makes you wonder what we were doing before all this digital overload. I know I'm guilty of having digital to-do lists that stretch for miles.
Oh, absolutely. Before the digital revolution, many people used physical desk diaries like those A5 faux leather ones. They were naturally limited. A typical 2-page week-to-view diary only had space for maybe 6 to 8 tasks a day. You could see instantly if you were overbooked. It practically screamed at you to reschedule. That physical constraint, it inherently protected us from overcommitment.
It's almost like the digital world just removed the guardrails, isn't it? That brutal honesty of you simply cannot fit another thing on this page that's just gone.
It really has. And the impact is real. We heard from Jeff Jackson, who uses the time sector system. He shared how life would just become overwhelming sometimes, leading to missed deadlines and, importantly, compromised family time. For him, the system was a total game changer. It helped him stay focused on what truly matters, both at home and work, and it positively impacted his productivity and, his overall well-being.
And it sounds like Jeff isn't alone in that struggle. I read Tracy Warren spent, 18 months trying everything, time blocking, endless to-do lists, Trello, and nothing really stuck.
Tracy's experience perfectly illustrates the problem, doesn't it? Just using tools without a coherent system behind them. She found the time sector system changed her relationship with time because it shifted her focus. Instead of these buckets by project or client, she started planning when things need to be done, regardless of what type of task it was. That shift allowed her to be more focused and feel much more in control. It's a really fundamental mindset change.
Okay, this next point is where it gets really interesting, I think, because it argues that simply doing more is basically a dead end. The real leverage isn't in task management at all, but in a deeper, more personal clarity. It's a foundational shift from what do I need to do to who do I want to be and what truly matters to that vision.
Mm-hmm.
So how does Carl Pullein suggest we even begin that process, that self-reflection to pinpoint what actually drives us?
Well, the central premise is that true productivity doesn't start with tasks, but with understanding what is important to you. If you don't have clarity on what's important, you're just efficiently managing busy work, which ultimately leads to unfulfillment. As the renowned speaker Zig Ziglar famously said, lack of time is not the problem, lack of direction is the problem. If you don't know what's important to you, your task list will just inevitably fill up with unimportant stuff.
Right. It's about identifying our why. So what are these foundational areas of focus that he suggests we build our lives around? Sounds quite core.
Yeah, it is. Carl Pullein identifies 8 universal areas of life that essentially we all have in common. These become our foundation. They are family and relationships, career, business, finances, health and fitness, spirituality, lifestyle and life experiences, personal development, and finally, purpose in life. And he argues pretty strongly that if you don't consciously dedicate time to these, they will eventually suffer.
Okay, could you walk us through them quickly? Maybe just a key takeaway or an example for each one.
Of course.
Yeah.
Let's see. Family and relationships. This could be as simple as dedicating, say, one evening during the week specifically for family time and really guarding it fiercely. Career, business. For truly successful people, work isn't just a job. It's part of a clear mission. When you have that mission, you're not just working, you're driven by purpose.
Okay.
Finances. This is interesting. It's not necessarily about how much you save, but developing the consistent habit of saving something, even if it's tiny, like $1.
Well,
Carl shared this great anecdote about his wife's pet saving scheme, basically. Small amounts over 10 years resulted in their dog Barney having saved $30,000. It's all about the habit.
wow. Okay. That's powerful.
Then health and fitness. This boils down to 3 core areas: sleep, diet, and movement. Aim for 6 to 8 hours of sleep. Eat natural foods. Try to avoid sugar. Get in daily walks. The book actually warns that by 2030, over 60% of people in the developed world are estimated to be dangerously overweight. So yeah, highlights the urgency there. Spirituality. This can mean different things to different people. Attending a religious service, spending time in nature, meditating, or even journaling for mental well-being and perspective. Finding your inner calm. Lifestyle and life experiences. This covers things like aspirational purchases, keeping a bucket list, trying new activities, or traveling. It's about balancing work with experiences that actually enrich your life.
Makes sense.
Personal development. This is all about continuous learning. Always be developing one new skill, maybe a language, an instrument, some software, and learn not just from successes, but crucially from your mistakes, and interestingly, the mistakes of others too.
Good point.
And finally, purpose in life. Carl Pullein himself defines his purpose as helping people become better organized and less stressed. It's essentially your personal mission statement.
It's clear how personal these are, and I imagine priorities can shift quite a bit over a lifetime, right?
Yeah.
How does the system help someone stay agile and, reevaluate those areas without feeling like they're constantly redesigning their entire life?
That's a great question. Priorities absolutely shift. For example, he mentions around age 35, health often shoots up the priority list. Maybe hangovers take longer to shake off?
Yeah, I can relate.
Or, when you have children, building a financial safety net can rapidly rise in importance. The key is to prioritize what's most important to you right now and then adjust as your life evolves. The system isn't meant to be rigid. It's designed to be dynamic.
And the practical application is to actually write a mission statement for each area.
Yeah.
How do you do that effectively so it's genuinely inspiring, not just words on a page?
Yes. The advice is to make them measurable, inspiring, and uniquely personal to you. The more emotion you can bring to these statements, the better, because they need to be something that genuinely pulls you forward. They're not just a list. They're meant to be a vision.
Okay, so with that clear vision of our life's priorities established, the next big challenge is translating that into the daily grind, especially at work. How does Carl's system help us cut through the noise of constant tasks and focus on what we actually do?
It's a really powerful shift to realize that you need to clarify your core work. This raises a critical question. Are you truly focused on what you're employed to do, or are you just getting bogged down by all the ancillary tasks? Understanding your core work becomes a powerful filter, almost like a medical triage. You identify your primary function and clearly distinguish it from busy work.
Can you give us some examples? What might that distinction look like in practice?
Certainly. So for a podcast producer, the core work is creating the actual podcast content.
Right.
For a salesperson, it's making sales calls. It's not filling out activity reports or expense forms. Those are often busy work. A truck driver's core work is driving goods to their destination, not necessarily completing fuel data sheets. These ancillary tasks, while sometimes necessary, should absolutely never be prioritized over your core responsibilities.
Got it. So once you've identified your core work, how do you ensure you actually dedicate time to it? Because that's often where people struggle protecting that crucial time from distractions and other demands.
This is where your calendar becomes absolutely critical. The rule is pretty simple. If something needs a specific amount of time and must be done at a specific time, it goes on your calendar. This includes meetings, obviously, but also dedicated study time, exercise sessions, anything like that. Your calendar, as Pullein says, will never lie to you. It shows you exactly how much time you have available and helps you guard it.
We hear about people like Carl Pullein himself or, famous authors using really disciplined time blocking. Is that basically what we're talking about?
Exactly that. Carl fixes specific writing blocks on his calendar, like, say, 2 hours every Monday and Tuesday morning. This ensures he consistently gets his core work done. We also see this with prolific authors. Jeffrey Archer apparently structures his day with 8 hours of writing, broken into 2-hour sessions with 2-hour breaks in between.
Wow.
Ian Fleming wrote his James Bond novels consistently for 3 to 4 hours a day at his GoldenEye bungalow. They knew their core work, and they fiercely protected that time.
And it's not just for, like, big creative work, right? It applies to anything that needs a fixed block of time.
Precisely. Michael Dell, for instance, famously committed to being home by 6 p.m. for family dinner. He'd work later if needed, but that family time was blocked. The concept is time blocking for your non-negotiables. If you're studying for an exam, you block out, say, 2 hours specifically for study, not the vague idea of studying all evening. You fit dinner or TV around that committed study time. It's all about intentional scheduling.
Okay, so with the vision set and core work identified, how do you then manage the daily deluge? All the tasks and information that constantly come your way. How do you keep it all organized without feeling totally overwhelmed?
Well, what's often overlooked is that pretty much every effective productivity system, from the simplest notebook to the fanciest app, has these 3 steps at its core: collect, organize, and do. Or CO, as Pullein calls it. It's fundamentally about building trust in your system so you don't feel that constant need to remember everything in your head, which is just a huge mental burden.
Right. Let's start with collect. What does that really mean in practice?
Collect basically means anything that grabs your attention, an idea, a task you promised someone, something you need to do. It needs to go into a trusted place immediately. This could be your task manager, your notes app, maybe even your calendar if it's time specific. The key is to nominate one primary collection tool, usually your notes or task manager, to avoid things slipping through the cracks. If you're unsure where it goes initially, just dump it in your main collection tool. Get it out of your head. You'll sort it later.
Okay, get it out of your head. And then organize. This sounds like where the time sector part of the system really comes into play.
It does, exactly. Organizing involves setting aside specific time, usually daily, to process everything you've collected. This is where you use those time sector folders to sort tasks based on when you intend to do them. These folders are typically something like this week, coming up, maybe next week or two, future and long term, and on hold. The real trick here is to default new tasks to don't need doing this week. If you immediately put everything into this week, you create pressure. If you push it to next week or coming up, there's a decent chance it might not even need doing by then. It allows you to defer intelligently.
That makes sense. And how do you make sure the tasks themselves are actually actionable, not just vague reminders like taxes or report?
Oh, that's crucial. You have to write your tasks using action verbs. Start them with a verb. So instead of just mortgage, you write pay the mortgage. Instead of do cleaning, write clean the kitchen. Tasks without an action verb. They tend to get ignored or constantly rescheduled. The verb gives the task power and clarity even when your energy is low. And Pullein also advises not to clutter your system with tasks that have natural triggers, like taking out the garbage when you see your neighbors putting theirs out, or cleaning your messy desktop when you actually sit down and notice it. Let the environment remind you sometimes.
Okay, that's smart. Avoid over-systematizing. Finally, do. This feels like the most obvious step, but probably the most challenging for most people, right? Where the rubber meets the road.
It absolutely is. The do part of COD is where ideally 95% of your time should be spent. Pullein is very clear. Reviewing is not doing. No amount of collecting or organizing actually gets the work done. Now, initially, organizing might take longer, especially when you're first setting up the system or getting back on track. But with consistency and refinement, you'll get much faster. Maybe that daily cleanup goes from 50 minutes down to 25. The main point is to spend the vast majority of your time doing the work.
Okay, this is where Carl Pullein's book really challenges our modern assumptions, I feel, especially in this world overflowing with must-have apps and endless productivity tools.
Yes, this is a really powerful shift to realize. Are you constantly seeking the perfect app to magically solve your problems, or are you focused on becoming more effective yourself? The book is quite blunt about it. No app will ever make you more productive. The only thing that will make you more productive is you. The app is simply a container for your system. It doesn't do the work for you. It's incredibly empowering when you grasp that, but it's often overlooked when we're chasing the next shiny tool.
I think so many listeners can relate to that. It's so easy to get caught up in tool hopping, isn't it? And the book warns against being swayed by the latest trends, like the current buzz around personal knowledge managers, or PKMs.
Precisely. Many people confuse apps for systems. A PKM might look impressive with all its fancy charts showing connections between notes, but before you jump on that bandwagon, you need to ask, does this actually work for my workflow? Does it help me do things? The core principle Pullein stresses is simplicity and trust in your system. The tools are there purely to support your system, not to be the system itself.
So given that philosophy, what are the truly essential tools Carl Pullein actually recommends for making this time sector system work?
It boils down to just three essentials: a calendar, a task manager, and a notes app. That's it. Your calendar is strictly for time-specific events and those pre-scheduled time blocks we talked about, meetings, study time, core work sessions, even blocking out family time. This is where your non-negotiables live. It guards your time. Your task manager is best used for clear, actionable tasks, things you need to do. It's not ideal for storing, say, snippets of information or meeting notes, because that info disappears once a task is checked off. Keep it, as Pullein says, the cleanest and tightest tool, focused purely on action.
And the Notes app. It sounds like it carries a lot of weight.
It really does. Your Notes app is kind of the backbone of the entire system. This is the ideal place for your project notes, your long-term goals, those areas of focus statements we discussed, checklists, reference material. Crucially, when you cross out a task within a project note, it doesn't just vanish, it usually just gets a line through it. This gives you a complete record and context for your projects, which is invaluable.
And what about all those random ideas or bits of information that might be valuable later, but they aren't really tasks? Where do they go?
That's where an archive folder within your Notes app comes in. Organized simply, maybe by year, it's not a trash can. Think of it as a treasure trove. These are the gold ideas you capture that you don't want to delete. Pullein uses the fantastic example of Leonardo da Vinci sketching the Mona Lisa's mouth something like 12 years before he actually started painting it. Those individual sketches might have seemed redundant at the time, but captured and kept, they could connect later to form your next great idea. It's about capturing knowledge and inspiration, not just tasks.
That's a great way to think about it. And his advice on starting with tools seems quite practical too, avoiding overwhelm.
Absolutely. The book strongly suggests starting simply, especially if you're new to productivity apps. Just use what's already built into your device, like Apple Reminders and Notes or Microsoft To Do and OneNote. They're powerful enough. It also warns against trying to over-integrate apps with complex links between them. Why? Because when those links inevitably break, you lose trust in your system. Simplicity builds reliability, which builds trust.
Okay, so we've set our vision, defined our core work, we understand the CI process and the essential tools. But how do you make all these pieces actually click together consistently? How do you truly take control of your time day to day, rather than just constantly reacting to whatever comes up? What's the glue that holds it all together?
If we connect this back to the bigger picture, consistent planning is precisely the glue of the entire system. It's non-negotiable. It helps you realign with your priorities regularly and prevents that chaos where suddenly everything feels important. Without dedicated planning time, even the best system can just fall apart under pressure.
Right. Let's talk about the specific planning sessions the book recommends. It sounds like there are different types or rhythms.
There are two main ones, plus an extra for emergencies. First, the weekly planning session. Ideally, this is done on a Saturday morning, maybe taking 30 to 40 minutes. This is where you bring everything together. You ensure your focus is on your core work and your main goals for the next 7 days. You review your calendar, look at your active projects, assess your available time. The book even suggests making this a pleasant ritual. Grab your favorite drink, maybe put on some music, find a quiet room, make it something you actually look forward to, not a chore.
I like that idea, making it enjoyable. And then the shorter, more frequent one, the one that keeps you on track daily.
That's the daily planning session. This is much shorter, maybe 10 to 15 minutes, and you do it at the end of each workday, looking ahead to tomorrow. Its main purpose is to calm your mind by confirming exactly what's planned for the next day. You review tomorrow's calendar, look at your task list for the day, and adjust if necessary. Maybe you were overambitious, maybe priorities shifted slightly. It's perfectly okay to reschedule tasks. You're human, not a robot. Don't beat yourself up about it. The goal is simply clarity and peace of mind before you switch off for the evening.
And what about those times when things just feel completely off the rails? Maybe after a long vacation or during an unexpected crisis at work?
Yes. Those are moments for what Pullein calls extraordinary planning sessions. When you feel intensely overwhelmed or you're just back from a trip with a mountain of emails and tasks, just stopping for 15 to 30 minutes to deliberately realign your system can quickly help you regain control. Your instinct might be to just dive in and work harder, but stepping back to plan in those moments is often far more effective.
And the system acknowledges that our energy levels aren't constant, right? That's a huge relief because some productivity gurus make it sound like you have to be operating at 100% capacity all the time.
Exactly. That's a really important point. You'll have good days, bad days, and frankly, some bad days where you just don't feel like doing much. The system absolutely accounts for this. On those meh or bad days, you simply focus on your absolute must-do tasks, the ones on your calendar, the critical deadlines, and you reschedule everything else without guilt. This flexibility is absolutely key to sustainable productivity, avoiding burnout.
Okay, so we know what to do with the system, but actually consistently doing it. That's another thing entirely, isn't it? How do we get past that inner resistance, that procrastination that often trips us up? This feels like the biggest hurdle for so many people.
Well, what's fascinating here is how our brains actually contribute to procrastination. When tasks lack a clear decision specifically on what needs to happen or when it will be done, your brain keeps them kind of floating around on the mind, which causes background anxiety. Often, just making that simple decision, I will do X on Tuesday at 10 a.m., or the next step for Y is Z, frees your mind and remove that mental burden. It's about bringing clarity to the undecided things floating around.
So it's not just about setting, say, smart goals that you hear about those all the time. How does that deeper motivation you mentioned earlier interact with more conventional goal-setting approaches? Is there a difference in how they affect discipline?
Precisely. While SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound, can work well in organizations where there's external motivation, like a boss or team accountability. For individuals, the missing piece is often that internal motivation, your deep why. Jim Rohn captured this beautifully when he said something like, become a millionaire not for the $1 million, but for what it will make of you to achieve it. See how that shifts the focus? It's not just the outcome, it's about who you become in the process. That's a much, much stronger internal driver for discipline.
Okay. So if you want to become more disciplined, you can essentially find a blueprint in others who already embody that.
Yes, the book suggests learning actively from others. Look at successful individuals, maybe Tony Robbins, who lives an incredibly disciplined life, or someone like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, known for his phenomenal self-discipline and energy. They provide a kind of blueprint. Observe their habits, their strategies, how they structure their time. You can adapt and integrate what resonates with you. It's about observing and applying, not just admiring.
And what's the connection the book makes between discipline and happiness? It seems counterintuitive to some people. Discipline sounds hard, not happy.
Carl Pullein makes the observation that people who live a well-structured, disciplined life are often actually the happiest. Why? Because accomplishment and the satisfaction that comes from achieving what you set out to do lead to happiness. He uses an analogy like meditation. It's difficult and maybe feels forced at first, but with consistency, it gets easier, and eventually it becomes something you look forward to because of the benefits. A disciplined life isn't dull. It's often full of excitement because you are actively achieving things that matter to you. You feel more in control.
So practically, how do we tackle those internal antagonists? The lure of the comfy sofa when you should be working out, or that irresistible fast food craving when you plan to cook.
You have to actively identify them as your enemies, as Pullein puts it, and consciously say no. Whenever you feel yourself being seduced by that comfort or ease, you need to stop and immediately go do what you know is right for your goals. Also, a key tactic is breaking down big, overwhelming tasks into really small, bite-sized chunks. This makes them feel less daunting and easier to start, and perhaps most importantly, turn your shoulds into musts. How? By scheduling intentional time for those important activities directly onto your calendar. If exercise is just a should, it's easy to skip. If it's gym session Tuesday, 6 p.m. on your calendar, it becomes a must. It gains a whole new level of commitment.
That's powerful. And what if that inner resistance or procrastination isn't just laziness? What if it's actually a sign of something else, like genuine fatigue?
That's a really crucial point to recognize. Sometimes procrastination is simply a sign of mental tiredness. If you find yourself unable to focus, getting easily distracted, maybe rereading the same sentence over and over, your brain is likely telling you it needs a break. A short walk outside might be enough to reset, or you might genuinely need to stop work for the day. Pushing through when you're truly mentally tired is usually counterproductive. You do poor work, and it can just make the next day even worse. It's really important to learn to differentiate between lack of motivation and genuine need for rest.
Okay, so beyond the core system itself, what are some practical daily habits that can significantly boost focus and maybe reduce those everyday distractions we all face? Are our typical daily routines actually supporting our productivity, or are they inadvertently creating time thieves and stress?
That's a great question. The key, according to Pullein, is to design routines that genuinely empower you, not just blindly copying what some guru does because it sounds impressive.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that. I know Robin Sharma's 5 a.m. club is hugely popular, but, well, it's clearly not for everyone, myself included. Waking up at 5 a.m., oof.
Exactly. Robin Sharma's 5 a.m. club structure, maybe 20 minutes of exercise, 20 minutes of planning, 20 minutes of learning it, works brilliantly for him. But Carl Pullein himself mentions he tried it for 18 months, and he found that as a natural night owl who often worked late, he simply wasn't getting enough sleep, which undermined everything else. Your morning routine needs to empower you, set your day right, and leave you feeling ready and energized, even if that means waking up later. It absolutely has to fit your natural rhythm and life circumstances.
That makes so much sense. Customization is key. And how does the book suggest we reframe our actual work itself for perhaps more motivation day to day?
A really useful reframe is to view work as an extension of your education. Instead of seeing it purely as a necessary evil or just a way to pay the bills, view it as a continuous opportunity to learn, grow, and gain valuable experience. Think about it. You often learn more practical, real-world skills from your career than from formal education. So see each day, each project, each challenge as a chance to learn, maybe fail sometimes, and definitely improve.
I like that perspective. What about physical movement throughout the day? It's so easy, especially working from home, to just sit in one spot for hours on end.
Yes, integrating short bursts of movement away from your screen is vital. After finishing a work session or a meeting, just take 10 minutes. Walk up and down the stairs, do a few quick chores if you're at home, or simply step outside for a brief walk. Movement is what your body was fundamentally designed for, and breaking up long periods of sitting can significantly boost your energy levels and mental focus. It's not just about hitting the gym for an hour, it's about consistent small movements throughout the day.
Okay, let's tackle the big one for many people. Email and messages. The constant interruptions. How does the system suggest we manage those without becoming total slaves to our inboxes and notifications?
Right, this is a critical area for reclaiming time and focus. First, Pullein emphasizes the power of setting expectations, sometimes even accidentally. He recounts this great anecdote from when he was new working in Korea. His chairman called him on a Saturday. Pullein didn't answer because it was his weekend. The chairman never called him on a Saturday again. That single instance, maybe even unintentional, set a clear boundary and a new expectation. Sometimes you have to gently train people how you engage.
That's fascinating, the sort of passive boundary setting.
Yeah.
What about the advice to clear email first thing in the morning? That seems completely counterintuitive to a lot of common productivity advice that says, don't check email first thing.
It does seem counterintuitive, but think about it. It's a practice someone like Winston Churchill would have excelled at. He apparently began his day by reading all his mail and the newspapers to get a full picture before acting. The absolute key here is to process email quickly, not necessarily respond immediately. The goal Pullein suggests is something like clearing 50 to 60 emails in about 20 minutes. Just scanning, deleting, maybe filing, identifying anything urgent. Get a clear picture of what's landed overnight. Then you schedule a dedicated block of time, maybe an hour later in the day, specifically to respond to communications. This approach avoids that constant back and forth email ping-pong all day and significantly reduces FOMO, the fear of missing out. It leads to a much more relaxed and focused day.
Processing versus responding, that's a key distinction. And for other messages, like Slack or texts.
Establish clear rules of engagement for yourself and maybe even communicate them to others. Simple things like no phone checking during meetings, definitely no phone while driving, or maybe even no phone in the bathroom. These small, consistent practices build discipline over time. Remember that saying often used by special forces, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Repeated practice makes these processes almost automatic, which frees up your mental energy to focus on the actual work itself.
Okay, so the book describes these different levels of productivity, culminating in a state the author calls the enlightened ones. It sounds pretty lofty, but what does it really mean to reach that highest level of time mastery?
Yeah, it does sound a bit mystical, doesn't it? But what's fascinating here is that this highest level isn't about having some super complex system or a specific magical tool. It's really about profound clarity, the effortless elimination of the unimportant, and achieving a genuine sense of peace of mind. Pullein describes 4 levels, roughly. Level 0 is the beginner, just starting out. Then there's the intermediate level. People here often get stuck focusing too much on apps, maybe neglecting things like the crucial weekly planning session. They tend to rely on finding a better tool rather than refining their underlying system.
Right, so how do you know if you're truly operating at that enlightened one level? What does that actually look like day to day?
Their defining characteristic, Pullein argues, is that they focus only on work that truly aligns with their defined areas of focus and their most important goals. Everything else gets filtered out, almost automatically. You'll often find these people are incredibly relaxed, calm under pressure, and very decisive. They're rarely late for anything, and critically, they've learned how to politely but firmly say no to additional commitments that don't serve their core purpose. They just have this remarkable ability to filter out the noise.
And it sounds like this definitely isn't about having the fanciest apps or the most complicated digital setup.
Oh, far from it. The enlightened ones truly understand that the tools themselves are basically meaningless when it comes to achieving peak performance. It's all about the consistent application of their system. David Allen, the getting things done guru, for example, apparently used the same fairly basic task manager for 20 years. Jack Dorsey, the former Twitter CEO, reportedly used Apple Notes for a decade for much of his workflow. Their power comes from consistency and deep focus on applying their system day in, day out. That's what makes them fast and effective, not the specific app they happen to choose.
And the ultimate reward. What's the payoff for reaching this level of profound clarity and control over your time?
Simply put, more time for genuine rest and relaxation without feeling guilty. Because they are so organized and completely in control of their commitments, they recognize when they actually need to rest, and crucially, they take that rest without any background anxiety about what they should be doing. It's a truly wonderful feeling, Pullein suggests, to be in that kind of control, knowing you're living your life aligned with your purpose and values.
So wow, we've covered quite a journey today, really moving from that common, overwhelming struggle of just endless tasks to designing a life built around your deepest purpose. It starts with identifying what truly matters to you, those areas of focus, then embracing strategic planning, using tools intentionally as just containers, not solutions, and actively cultivating that unwavering discipline.
Absolutely. And it's crucial to remember, this isn't some one-time fix. It's presented as a continuous process, a journey of learning, adjusting, and constantly refining your system as your life evolves. Each iteration ideally brings you closer to a more fulfilled life, where your actions consistently align with your core values and goals.
So for you listening right now, here's a final thought to take away. What is one small, intentional step you can commit to scheduling? Actually put it on your calendar this week that directly serves an area of focus you genuinely care deeply about. Not something you should do, but something you declare a must. That single act of intentionality, of making a clear decision and taking that first concrete step, that's where your true transformation can begin.